Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Board of Education's public hearing on the redistricting recommendation for Pangborn and Paramount Elementary Schools. I want to welcome everybody to the boardroom. We're going to start with a brief description of the proposed attendance zone realignment provided by Mr. Michael, and as soon as we've completed that, we'll go ahead and open the floor for public comment. So, Mr. Michael?
Good evening, President Ridenour, so I'm sorry. Long force of habit.
I could do a lot worse.
President Hardy, members of the board, Dr. Wilcox, I do apologize. Staff wanted to provide a brief context of tonight's hearing. And on the PowerPoint, as the board's aware, the board charged the FIAC committee, the Facilities Enrollment Advisory Committee, with studying the Pangborn district and trying to come up with a temporary, at least, enrollment relief for that school that is overcrowded. The FIAC committee, again, Facilities Enrollment Advisory Committee, met several times, followed board policy, followed the charge before them, as well as looked at 12 different possible combinations or recommendations that they considered before they forwarded their recommendation that you see on the screen now to the superintendent and to the board for consideration. The superintendent, since that time of April 2nd, has endorsed the recommendation. If I might,
Boyd, if I might, I don't want anybody to think in here that we're not patriotic, but that's Little League Baseball that is kicking off their evening games. It's not that we skipped the national anthem this evening. Okay, so thank you. Sorry, Boyd. I just saw people looking around thinking,
yeah. I heard something in the background. I wasn't sure what I was hearing. Should I wait?
play ball.
Okay. And the recommendation, if I can read it from the screen, establish a new Paramount Elementary attendance zone by incorporating the northernmost portion of the Pangborn Elementary attendance zone, including Cortland Villas, Cortland Manor townhomes, and 11 buildings of Cortland Park to Paramount Elementary. Also in the screen, it notes a number of comments and effects that will occur to both schools as required by policy to be studied. Just some maps for the general public. You can see the two districts of Paramount and Pangborn. The area in red is the area that's being recommended to the board for consideration to move into the Paramount district. We blow that up a little bit closer, and then we kind of look at a Google map area. I drove through the area recently, just to get a feel for it as well. I'm sure some of you did as well. The Cortland Villas Manor, and then the 11 apartment buildings are in this lower section. I believe in addition to this slide, since the last time the board saw this, Mr. Criswell went through and added the apartment numbers for the 11 buildings in the Cortland Park area. This has been communicated extensively. We want to thank Richard Wright for his efforts, the school principal and the staff at both Paramount and Pangborn for their efforts to help support this. But information has been sent home by mail, by email, on Facebook, backpack, as well as Alert Now messages. We've also had an advertisement on the back page of the paper for tonight's hearing. So there's been extensive communication both during the FIAC process and for the hearing tonight. Next steps, the public hearing, obviously we have tonight, and we'll continue to accept comments as the staff receives comment. We'll make sure that the board members and the FIAC committee, the superintendent, receive those comments throughout this process, and we'd anticipate or requesting your consideration of vote on May 7th. Contact information for the general community is up on the screen right now. The address they can write to the board, write directly to you in email. They can call Richard Wright's office, so actually transcribe any information that's provided and make sure that the board members receive those comments prior to the vote. So little guidelines for the public hearing. Individuals generally are provided 3 minutes to speak. Someone representing a group is provided 5 minutes to speak. And if anyone has comments and they have them in writing, we'd like to suggest that they provide them to the board in writing. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Michael. As Mr. Michael said, the purpose of a public hearing really is for us to gather information. It's not designed to be a back and forth give and take between the board and anybody who might have comments to offer for us. It really is for us to get a sense of what people are thinking about, whatever it is the board's considering, and in this case, it's the attendance zone realignment. So we welcome anybody, whether you've got 9 copies of whatever you have to say, or whether you haven't prepared anything, or you want to share any thoughts whatsoever with the board. We are enthusiastic about hearing what anybody has to say. As he said, the guidelines say 3 minutes per individual. Mr. Bailey here's our timekeeper. He'll let me know when somebody's close to 3 minutes. We won't cut you off mid-sentence, I promise. If you're speaking on behalf of an organization, a homeowners association, or anything of that sort, we allow 5 minutes. So, with that having been said, we'll be glad to open the floor to anybody who wishes to offer comment. Yes, ma'am. Please. If you could just let us know who you are.
Well, first of all, my name is Stephanie Wilkinson. I happen to be an employee of Washington County Public Schools.
And you're here representing yourself or
as
group?
a parent of
right,
a student
great.
at Paramount and another student. My questions are, the consensus really, I think, within the Paramount community is that this is a done deal. The decision has been made. So we kind of are interested in finding out, where do we go from here? Is there any information available as far as if any additional staff will be added to Paramount, both professional staff and then classified staff as far as assistants and so forth? Will Mrs. Wolford receive an assistant principal? Will there be additional technology sent our way? Any idea?
I'll turn it to Dr. Wilcox.
One of the things that we want to do is make sure that the board is in a position to make a decision. But we're also find ourselves kind of caught in a funny place that we don't want to go through a whole planning exercise, move teacher units, if the board doesn't go in that direction. What we have said is that the approximately 65 to 70 students that come, we're taking a look right now at what classes they would go into. Where is their capacity at Pangborn? Where might we have to add additional units? Mm-hmm. We're also taking a careful look at the challenges that exist at the school at Paramount and what new challenges that we might bring. For example, if many of these kids are below grade level in terms of their reading ability, what might we have to do to help with that? On the other hand, if many of these kids require gifted services, what might we have to do to help with that? So we are taking a look at that. The other thing that we're looking at is our staffing ratios. Will this 70 kids put Mrs. Wolford in a position where she'd qualify for an assistant principal? So we are looking at those kinds of things, but we can't get too far ahead of the board in terms of its action, because once the board says yes, then we will actually notify folks. We'll take a look at what resources must be added, what resources can remain the same. I will speak to one thing directly. I don't think that there will be an increase in the number of technology units in the school just as a result of this. There may be more technology there because we're trying to push technology across the system, but simply because these students are coming, we would not add.
Okay. I guess my request would be then, as a parent who happens to be an employee, that I understand this year we had, as you are well aware of, a lot of new initiatives that have come down the pike. Mm-hmm. So if a timeline has not been determined, I guess my only request is that the board would consider making a decision sooner, because if new positions were to be made at Paramount, that those opportunities would be open to current Washington County Public School teachers, because it'd be great to have experienced teachers there, and teachers who have been trained this past year with the Charlotte Danielson and the Common Core. I mean, we would like to have the opportunity to have those types of teachers sent our way. So if a decision's made, I would hope that it would just be made sooner than later, so it could influence, who ultimately ends up at Paramount. Mm-hmm. Okay?
It's always our hope to use voluntary transfer process before we hire new, mm-hmm. And then hire the new teachers in the places where the voluntaries have created a position. I'm not sure that we can get there in this time frame, but that is, I think if you look at the way the calendar plays out, we ought to be able to make decisions before the end of the school year.
Okay, so you are anticipating right now that...
I do anticipate that we will.
Okay.
We have this on our agenda tentatively scheduled for May 7th, okay, when we meet. So that's when we expect as a board to make a decision, unless there's something we hear tonight or information we gain in the next 2 weeks that makes us say we need to think about this some more.
Okay, so. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
One of the things I did not do is introduce Steve. Morning. Have you taken a look at the distribution of kids by grade level yet? Can you comment on that, or would you rather wait?
I'd rather wait. I do have a list, and I know, but I'd rather wait until it as soon as May because I don't want to influence any.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Please come.
Makes it much easier for us.
You trying to hide back there, weren't you?
My name's Nicole Ingram. I have 2 children that are currently at Pangborn. One for sure will not be going. It doesn't matter which way you zone because she's scheduled for Fountaindale. Is it going to be something if the kids, because kind of what I'm sensing, I just moved to the area, and initially when I was looking at moving into the apartment complex, the kids were zoned to go to Paramount. By the time I actually finished up what I needed to do in Georgia and moved, they were now at Pangborn, and now only, not even a full 2 years later, to hear that they're getting split. What caused the initial change for the kids to go to Pangborn to begin with, and how is it shifting back all of a sudden? That's just my concern as a parent. What's with the shift in? Again, I've only been here 2 years, going on 2 years, so I don't know where it shifted from May to by the September when I actually moved. And then now it's not a full 2 years and it's shifting back again.
We have some folks who can answer this better than I, but I think it's fair to say is that we were not very good in terms of anticipating the number of kids that would locate into the Cortland apartment complex. My sense is that we budget based, or we project based on a certain number of bodies coming from each unit. We missed that.
Okay.
And so there were significantly more kids. Interestingly, Mrs. Williams had asked a question, she had asked I guess I should have asked. She had asked a question the other day about some of the characteristics of the kids that are being moved. And in asking that question, the response came back with 70 kids, not the 55 to 60 that we had projected. And the reality is, when we went back and looked at that number, it's simply because the population shifts at Cortland are so dynamic based on when people move in, when they leave, and who replaces them in those units, that it's proven to be very difficult for us.
Well, I can tell you, if you're still looking, mine, if it's for my address, it's one of the 2 that's there. She's going to the magnet program. And then with that said, is there going to be an option, a possibility for a parent to choose a different school, or we have to go to the Paramount?
Only if the parent is engaged in one of our specialized programs. There won't be a choice for a family to say, well, you know what, I like your options, Superintendent, but I pick Smithsburg, or that option wouldn't be available yet.
But our policy does say that if you have a student who's in 4th grade who would be going to 5th grade, who would be affected by the redistricting, that they can stay in the school to finish out their elementary school with their
No,
current
mine are
class.
young. They're 2nd and 3rd grade next year.
Just as a point of information, and our facilities people would tell you exactly the same thing differently. We project based on 10-year analysis of how many students we get out of apartments, how many students we get out of single-family homes and other domiciles. But we were way off on Cortland. And it was a different dynamic, and there's some reasons for that we're aware of now, but we weren't aware of at that time. We are getting many, many more students out of apartments than we typically did. So that's how we missed. We're going to have another redistrict probably in 2 years when we open another new school. So it's very fluid in this county, maybe more so than any county in the state, because our student population continues to rise when everybody else is flat, and in some cases is even dropping. So it's been a challenge for our facilities people and even our consultants to get the numbers to make sense.
I did have one brief question. I don't know if I'm in my 3 minutes.
Sure, go ahead.
How are they going to deal with the gifted program with kids that were in the program going into a new school? Because I've experienced that, not here, but other places where it was by an amount of spots. So if there was somebody else before it only allows so many people in the program.
We do not allocate spots to kids in the gifted program. We take a look at each individual student and we try to meet their needs. Mr. Warnick could talk specifically about those services. I just can't. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's it.
Thank you.
I would also mention this, that we have the principals from both schools here in the room. Erin Warford is a principal at Paramount. She's in the back of the room, so if you have a specific question for Erin, please don't hesitate to ask her. And Eric Meredith is sitting next to Mr. Warnick, who is the principal at Pangborn. And they're here to be supportive to the families in this challenge. And our elementary director, Steve Warnick, is here as well.
Is there anybody else who'd like to offer comment?
But you have to come up here because it's for TV. It's not really for them.
To piggyback, though, on what she just mentioned as far as the enrichment program, is there any information that Mr. Warnick or anybody can offer that I realize that it's not a slot issue. However, the GATE program has been drastically expanded this year, but still working on, limited staff. So I guess maybe then that's something else I'm requesting that be visited when considering additional staff at Paramount next year, not only to meet needs of those who are struggling, but what can we continue to do to meet the needs of students who meet those enrichment guidelines and choose not to pursue the Magnum program.
It's a very good question. In fact, we are doing that. In fact, if you would talk to Jessica Reinhardt, who is our specialist in this area, one of the things that Jessica is doing is converting parapro positions to actual instructional positions so that we have the teachers that are completely certified in the gifted areas of instruction. And that's all in an effort to provide better services.
So we could approach her to find out what the anticipated...
Or you could talk to me and I'll talk to her, however you would like to do it.
Okay. All right.
Is there anybody else who'd like to ask a question or provide a comment? And I'd just say in response as well to some of the comments you've made, those are the kinds of questions that board members are asking. Believe me, I think the superintendent knows very well that if this board felt like students were going to move to a different school and lose services, I think the superintendent knows he'd have a pretty unhappy board. I think I can speak for all of us in saying that. These processes are never easy for boards of education, but I think we recognize that at some point the educational opportunity of a child in a school that has too many students in it is negatively affected by the fact that there are too many students in that school. And I think our intention as a board is to find a solution to that where we can expand opportunities for kids in the new school as well as students in the school from which they're leaving. So.
That said, I can't provide services, the same services for every kid that they might have. One of the board members is asking me about Title I services on a regular basis. I will never be able to provide Title I services at Paramount given the current socioeconomic environment of that school. And because I can't provide those services, I then can't provide some of the services that go with those dollars. For example, I will not be able to have a parent liaison that was paid for with Title I dollars currently at Pangborn at Paramount. But that doesn't mean that we can't do something with family engagement and at a different level using different funding sources. So Dr. Hardy is right. I absolutely know. And I have several board members who are just waiting, I think, to get me. And I don't mean it in a bad way, Ms. Williams. But this is something that's important to them, and they're passionate about the quality of service that we provide. So we're looking at it, but we probably can't provide same services, but we can provide services for all kids. It's in all of our best interest to do that.
I've made a couple of comments Mr. Ridenhour has. Is there any other? Mr. Bailey?
Just a word, hopefully, of experience and reassurance. I've been through any number of redistricting, some that have been bitterly contested, But things do work out quite well, from my experience, over any number of these. By October of the next school year, I don't think I ran across a parent who expressed great anxiety before their children moved. That they didn't have a good feeling once they got into the building and their children learned the teachers and how to find their way around and so forth. So the anxiety level goes up, but then it comes back down. That's been my experience.
I agree with you. I think you're correct. We just hope that supports our application.
If there's nobody else who wants to offer comments from the public, are there any other board members who want to say a brief word or two? We've had a couple of us, which is not really our procedure, but if anybody else wants to.
The one lady asked about why, when she first moved to the apartment complex, they had told her before she moved it was going to be Paramount, and then she found out it was Pangborn. I think that probably occurred because of opening the new Paramount, or the new Pangborn school.
Is there anybody else? Well, I want to thank you all for coming. If there are further questions that either the staff or the board members can answer, please don't hesitate to ask. We want to be able to make the best decision we can as a board, and regardless of what the board decides, I think we want to be sure that every student has a great experience in our schools, whichever school they attend. So thank you all for attending, and we'll declare the meeting adjourned.